He sent her a wedding invitation. Not out of kindness, but as a cruel joke. She was just the maid. No one expected her to show up, but when the doors opened, and she walked in looking like a goddess, the entire room went silent. The groom froze, and the bride felt something was about to go terribly wrong. Asterisk, the chandeliers sparkled like stars above the grand hall of the Ellington estate. Opulence dripped from every inch, gold trim, velvet drapes, violinists in white tuxedos, and trays of champagne balanced delicately by uniformed servers. This wasn't just a wedding. It was an exhibition of wealth, a performance of prestige. The groom, Ashton Delacroix, was the son of a real estate tycoon, the kind of man who inherited his fortune along with an inflated sense of superiority. He stood near the grand staircase in a custom navy tuxedo, laughing with a group of groomsmen. Champagne sloshed in crystal glasses as they clinked them together. Ashton was smug, polished, and smug again. "I swear, I did it," he said, his voice loud enough to rise above the string quartet. "I actually invited her." "One of his friends?" Brunt blinked. Who'd you invite?" Ashton's lips curled into a wicked smile. The maid, Brant snorted. Wait, that woman with the braids? The one who scrubs your floors? Exactly. You should have seen the face of my butler when I asked him to deliver the invite. I mean, come on, can you imagine her walking into this place around senators and CEOs? It's hilarious, Brant doubled over laughing. You're evil. Asterisk, I'm bored, Ashton replied, shrugging. Thought I'd spice things up. Besides, it's not like she'd show up. Her name was Malaya. For nearly 4 years, she had worked in silence at the Delacroix mansion. Always early, always quiet. She never asked questions, never made mistakes. Just did her job and left. Her long braided hair was always tied back. Her clothes were simple, plain. She blended into the background by design, but Ashton had never once wondered why a woman with eyes that intelligent was dusting window panes. He didn't know that. Malaya used to be someone else. The envelope had arrived on a Thursday, cream-colored, wax-sealed with her name scrawled in calligraphy. She'd stared at it for a full hour before she opened it. An invitation to the Delacroix wedding addressed to her personally. At first, she thought it was a mistake. But no, her name was spelled correctly. It was real, and cruel. She placed it on the counter beside her worn lunchbox and sat down, hands trembling. It was a joke. She knew it. Everyone in that house saw her as nothing more than background noise, especially Ashton, but something inside her stirred. A memory, a fire. That night, Malaya stood in front of a cracked mirror in her small one-bedroom apartment. She touched the curls that used to fall proudly around her face. She used to dream of being a corporate lawyer, used to walk campus halls with confidence, used to believe in herself until life interrupted. Her mother had passed during her final year at a top university. Her little sister Kaisha needed care. Bills needed to be paid. Dreams had to be shelved. And so she cleaned, but she never forgot who she was. The invitation wasn't meant to include her. It was meant to exclude her. But maybe, just maybe, she could turn the insult into something else. 2 days later, the wedding day arrived. Malaya walked through the downtown shopping district, unsure of where to go or what to wear until fate intervened. At a bus stop, she heard her name, Malaya. She turned. A tall woman in a burgundy blazer and gold heels stared at her with disbelief. Camille? Malaya said, breath catching. Camille ran to her. Oh my God, Malaya, is it really you? They embraced tightly. Camille had been her college roommate, the one who got the internship Malaya had passed on, the one who had kept in touch until life got busy and years drifted by. What are you doing here? Camille asked. Malaya hesitated, then held up the ivory invitation. Camille raised an eyebrow. You were invited to the Delacroix wedding? By Ashton? As a joke, I think? Camille's face hardened. That figures. But let's turn this joke into a statement. Before Malaya could respond, Camille took her hand and led her into a salon. You're not walking into that room in jeans, she said. We're about to remind some people what a queen looks like. Inside the Delacroix ballroom, the ceremony. was just minutes from beginning. Ashton stood at the altar, checking his Rolex every 10 seconds. The bride, Emily, a poised, sweet woman from an equally powerful family, was upstairs, getting final touches on her makeup. The air smelled of roses, vanilla, and money. Then the grand doors opened. At first, no one turned. People assumed it was just another late guest, but then someone gasped that she stood in the doorway, tall and radiant in a sleek emerald green gown that clung to her in all the right places. Her hair was swept into a soft updo adorned with pearl pins that shimmered in the light. Her skin glowed and her eyes, fierce, proud, moved calmly across the crowd. Whispers fluttered like wind through leaves. "Who is she? Is she a model? An ambassador?" Ashton turned and froze. He dropped his champagne glass. It shattered at his feet, but he didn't notice. Standing before him wasn't the maid he once ignored. It was Malaya. Reborn, regal, stunning, the very picture of grace under pressure. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. The room stilled as she walked down the aisle, not to take anyone's place, but to remind them all that she was never beneath them. Her dignity did the talking. She walked to the back and took a quiet seat, but no one not a single soul could stop staring. Even the bride, watching from the staircase, noticed the shift. A ripple in the air. Something powerful had just entered the room, something unstoppable. Silence hovered like a veil over the ballroom, broken only by the soft clink of a dropped fork and the faint echo of a photographer's shutter. It wasn't part of the evening's schedule, but Malaya's entrance had become its defining moment. Ashton couldn't breathe. For years, he had walked past her in his house without a second glance. She was simply the help. Someone who folded his shirts and scrubbed his marble floors. She was the one who was invisible in her own presence until now. Now, she was all he could see. "Who is that?" murmured a senator's wife at a nearby table. The event coordinator, sweating from the unexpected disruption, whispered frantically into her headset. "Do we know who she is?" No one had an answer, but Emily, the bride, watched with measured grace from the mezzanine above, holding her bouquet with fingers tightened around the stems. Something had changed. Her fiancé's eyes were following the mystery woman with a recognition that was too intense, too personal. Something unsaid hung in the air. Malaya, meanwhile, didn't rush or shrink. She moved with the calmness of someone who knew exactly who she was. She made her way to the back, chose a chair closest to the shadows, and sat like a queen at court. Her presence stirred whispers, but her expression silenced judgment. She didn't need validation. She was reclaiming it. As the ceremony began and vows echoed through the hall, Malaya sat quietly, her mind drifting. The past had a way of waiting, hiding in the silence, only to erupt in moments like this. She remembered the first time she walked through the Delacroix gates. It was raining and her coat had holes at the elbows. She was 24, desperate for a paycheck. Her younger sister, Kaisha, had been in and out of hospitals, and Malaya had deferred law school a second time. The job had been humiliating at first, not because cleaning was beneath her, but because she knew she had been trained for more. But work was work. And if life demanded survival, she'd survive with dignity. No one ever asked her story. Not Mrs. Delacroix, not the butler, and certainly not Ashton, who spent more time bragging on the phone than acknowledging the woman who made sure his suits were pressed before his board meetings. She had memorized the rhythm of the house: 7:45 a.m. vacuuming the gallery wing, 9 a.m. polishing the crystal in the main dining room, lunch break at noon if there was time, and always out of sight during events. She had overheard plans for Ashton's engagement for months, heard the shallow conversations about wealth, heard his jokes about poor people being motivated by laziness, heard his demeaning remarks when he thought no one was listening. But she listened, and she remembered. As the reception began, string quartet replaced the officiant's voice, and servers swept in with trays of hors d'oeuvres, but everyone's focus remained divided. Women sneaked glances at Malaya from behind jeweled clutches. Men straightened their ties as they passed by her, unsure whether to greet or avoid her. She sat still, composed, sipping a glass of sparkling water someone nervously offered her. Then a voice pierced the din. "Malaya?" She turned. It was Mrs. Elaine Delacour Ashton's mother, dressed in deep plum velvet, her diamonds catching the light. "You look different," Elaine said, studying her. Malaya smiled softly. "I clean up well." Elaine's lips twitched, caught between confusion and discomfort. "I didn't expect you to come." "Ashton didn't say you'd been invited." "Maybe he didn't expect me to accept," Malaya replied, unbothered. There was an awkward pause. "Well," Elaine murmured, her gaze slipping away. "Do enjoy yourself." She walked off before Malaya could respond. But it didn't matter. Ashton, still stunned, found himself moving through the crowd like a ghost. Nothing felt real. The applause for his wedding speech sounded like static. The taste of champagne turned bitter in his throat. He found his way to the back of the hall where Malaya sat alone beneath a cascade of orchids. "Malaya?" he said, voice low. She looked up. "Calm, steady. I didn't think you'd come," he admitted. She tilted her head. "I figured you didn't." He sat across from her, the weight of embarrassment settling on his expensive shoulders. "That dress—" he began, then faltered. "You look like a person?" she offered. He swallowed. "Like royalty," she gave a short laugh. "Royalty doesn't scrub floors, remember? That's not what I meant. I know what you meant." "I also know what you meant?" "When you told your friend it would be funny to invite me." His face flushed. "You don't know anything about me, Ashton," she continued, voice low but firm. "You never asked. You never cared." He looked away. "I used to want to be someone," she said. "Used to study 12 hours a day. I was set to be the youngest graduate of my university's law program. But then my parents died. Car crash. Both gone. I had a little sister who still had nightmares. I had no family, no support, no time to grieve, so I worked. I chose dignity over despair, even when people like you treated me like I was invisible." He looked stunned. Guilt danced in his eyes, but it was too late for that. "I judged you," he said finally. "I'm sorry." She nodded once. "Good, but I didn't come for an apology." "Then why?" She looked toward the crowd. "Because I needed to remind myself of who I still am." Near the desert table, a woman with silver hair and a silk scarf had been listening quietly. She approached with a warm smile. "Excuse me," she said. "Did I hear you mention St. Edmund's University?" Malaya turned. "Yes, I studied there." The woman's eyes sparkled. "I'm Dr. Simone Kravitz. I teach law there." "I thought I recognized your face." "You gave the speech on restorative justice in 2015, didn't you?" Malaya's eyes widened. "Yes, I did. You left just before finals. Everyone wondered what happened to you." Dr. Kravitz touched her hand. "You were one of our brightest." Malaya felt her throat tighten. "If you're still interested in finishing your degree," Dr. Kravitz said gently, "we have an alumni sponsorship program. We'd be honored to have you back." Tears welled in Malaya's eyes. I don't know what to say." "Say yes," the professor said with a smile. As the night wore on, Malaya stood once more and walked toward the exit. This time, heads didn't turn in surprise, but in quiet reverence. Some nodded. Some lowered their eyes. Ashton remained seated, watching her like someone who'd seen an angel pass through his life and knew he'd never be near that light again. She didn't need the last word. She didn't need revenge. She just needed to remember the truth. She had never been beneath them, only hidden. And now she was done hiding. The city lights shimmered like spilled stars across the windshield as the car glided through the quiet streets. In the back seat, Malaya sat with her eyes half closed, head leaning gently against the cool glass, the rhythm of passing streetlights casting a golden pulse over her thoughts. Zuri drove in silence, respectful, but every now and then she'd glance in the rearview mirror to study her old friend, the same girl who once scribbled dreams into the margins of legal textbooks, who once talked about systemic reform like it was personal poetry. Now that girl had walked into a room full of power, privilege, and pretense and made them all pause. "You okay?" Zuri finally asked, voice soft. Malaya opened her eyes. "Yeah, it's just a lot." Zuri smiled. "You shut down a wedding without saying a single insult." That takes a special kind of power, Malaya chuckled faintly. I didn't go there to ruin anything. No, you went there to remind yourself who the hell you are, and you did. They shared a look in the mirror, years of unspoken struggles, folded into a moment of understanding. The next morning, Malaya woke to a message she never expected, not from Ashton, but from Judge Vivian Whitmore, the woman who had approached her by the dessert table. The message was short. There's a seat for you at the university. Full scholarship. Semester starts in 6 weeks. Let's meet Monday. Her heart nearly stopped. She read the message twice, then a third time, hands trembling around her phone. For so long, life had been about surviving the next bill, the next shift, the next emergency. And now, for the first time in years, someone had offered her a beginning, but beginnings didn't come without fear. Later that day, Malaya walked into her modest apartment, still dressed in her work scrubs from a part-time elder care job she picked up to help Kaisha through nursing school. The apartment was neat, sparse. Bookshelves full of law books and thrift store novels. A faded photo of her parents hung by the window, their arms around each other, beaming in front of a food truck they once owned. She stood in front of that photo and whispered, "I'm going back." And somehow she felt they heard her. Over the next few weeks, the whispers from the wedding refused to die down. Clips from the night went viral. A bystander had uploaded a video titled, "The Mystery Woman Who Silenced a Wedding." It had over 2.4 million views. People speculated endlessly. Some thought she was a royal from a hidden country. Others said she was a spiritual healer. A few tabloids even claimed she had dated the groom in secret, but Malaya ignored them all. She had no interest in being a trending moment. She wanted to be a lasting force. Her days became filled with paperwork, class registration, reconnecting with old professors, and cautiously sharing the news with Kaisha, who screamed with joy and cried into her shoulder. "You never gave up." "On me," Kaisha whispered. Malaya kissed her forehead. "We don't give up on each other." Meanwhile, in a penthouse suite with high ceilings and hollow laughter, Ashton sat alone. The wedding had gone on, but the warmth had vanished. Emily had sensed it. The eyes he used to save only for her, they had drifted somewhere else. Not in desire. In regret. She confronted him 3 days after the ceremony. "You didn't marry me," she said. You escaped embarrassment. He didn't deny it. He couldn't. The marriage began cold and continued. Colder. He had everything he ever wanted, money, attention, applause, but none of it felt right anymore. Because in one night he saw what true power looked like. A woman he dismissed had walked into his celebration and walked out with her, dignity intact and his ego shattered. The world now saw him as a cautionary tale, not a success. He tried to reach out to her once, twice, but Malaya didn't respond. She owed him nothing. 2 months later, Malaya stepped onto the campus of St. Edmund's once more, books in her arms, a student ID around her neck, and confidence in every step. She was older than most of her classmates now, but wiser. She sat in the front row of her first lecture, head held high. Professor Kravitz walked in and paused upon seeing her. "Everyone," she said, her voice echoing through the lecture hall. "This woman here once wrote a paper that challenged how I saw the world." She vanished before she could turn it into action, but now she's back. "And I hope you're all taking notes." The class turned toward Malaya with curiosity and admiration. Malaya smiled, nodded slightly, and opened her notebook. Weeks passed. She buried herself in studies, late-night coffee, student forums, and mentorships. She spoke at a youth event about perseverance. She volunteered at a legal aid clinic representing tenants in eviction court. Her name began surfacing in newsletters and public interest circles. One publication dubbed her the future of equity law. Still, she remained humble. She remembered cleaning the corners no one ever saw. Then, one evening, a letter arrived by mail. Handwritten. No return address. Inside was a simple note. "You were right. I never saw you. I never saw anyone but myself. I hope you never shrink again for someone like me. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I do wish you victory." Ashton, she folded the note, tucked it into her drawer, and moved on. Because forgiveness wasn't always for others. Sometimes It was a decision to not carry their shame any longer. At the end of the semester, during a scholarship gala hosted by the university, Malaya stood in front of hundreds of guests. Professors, deans, students, and even community leaders filled the grand hall. She stepped up to the podium, gripping the sides, nerves dancing in her chest. "My name is Malaya Vaughn," she began, voice clear. "And for 5 years I was a maid. I was overlooked, dismissed, laughed at. But that's not where my story ends. That's where it begins. Because being underestimated gave me the fuel to remember who I am. And now, I intend to make sure no one is ever overlooked again." Thunderous applause followed. Some stood. Others wiped tears, but one thing was certain: the queen who was never crowned had finally claimed her throne. 2 years later. The courthouse buzzed with tension. Families paced the marble halls. Lawyers flipped through case files. Voices whispered behind closed doors. But in courtroom 3B, all fell silent as a tall poised woman stepped forward, black suit, natural curls pinned into a soft bun, eyes that didn't look down anymore. "Your Honor," she said calmly, "my client is a single mother who was served a wrongful eviction notice during the pandemic. We have proof the landlord neglected repairs and violated the Housing Act by forcing her out without cause." Judge Whitmore sat at the bench, listening intently. She nodded with a smile of recognition, pride behind her professional mask. The woman presenting the case was Malaya Vaughn, once a maid, now a full-fledged lawyer. Her words were precise, her evidence airtight, her purpose clear, and the judge's ruling: in favor of the tenant, full damages awarded, case dismissed. As the mother burst into tears and hugged Malaya, the room erupted in quiet applause. Even opposing counsel stood in admiration, not because Malaya had won, but because she fought with grace, empathy, and brilliance. Outside, reporters waited. "She's the rising voice of the voiceless," one anchor whispered to her camera crew. "A modern-day Erin Brockovich with elegance," another tweeted, but Malaya? She didn't stop to speak. She walked past the flashing lights, the microphones, the shouts. Because her mission wasn't fame. It was justice. Meanwhile, far across town, in a glossy skyscraper office built on ego and old money, Ashton Wexler scrolled through his phone. He paused on a headline: "From maid to magistrate, Malaya Vaughn changes the legal game in underserved communities." Her photo-sharp jawline, eyes steady, standing beside a group of inner-city youth she'd helped place in internship programs, stared back at him. She looked unstoppable. He sat back in his chair, the luxury around him suddenly feeling hollow. The marriage that once seemed glamorous had quietly ended in divorce. Emily had left 6 months after the wedding. She didn't blame him outright, but she saw his heart was elsewhere, not in love, but in longing for redemption. And now, watching Malaya soar, Ashton realized she never needed revenge. Because she had purpose. Back in her small but bright office, Malaya lit a candle by her desk. Behind her were framed letters from children she'd helped stay in school, and a plaque that read, "Justice is not a privilege, it's a right." Zuri entered, holding coffee. "Another win?" Malaya smiled. "Another mother kept her home. That's a win for all of us." "You've become a legend," Zuri said. "We're thinking of starting the Vaughn Foundation to offer scholarships for women re-entering school." Malaya blinked. "In my name? In your legacy?" Zuri corrected. "Because girls need to know that no matter where they start, even if it's cleaning chandeliers in silence, they can end up changing courtrooms." Malaya laughed through tears. "Okay, let's do it." Months passed. The Vaughn Foundation launched with quiet determination. It offered mentorship, legal clinics, academic support, and emotional counseling for women transitioning from shelters, cleaning jobs, or abusive homes into education and leadership. The opening event was held in the very same ballroom where she was once mocked. This time, however, she entered not in borrowed silk, but in confidence stitched by experience. This time they clapped for her. CEOs, judges, students, activists. Even Graham's father, once a dismissive tycoon, stood in attendance. He approached her with humble eyes. "My son didn't deserve you," he admitted, "but the world does." Thank you for proving us all wrong, Malaya simply smiled. I didn't do it to prove you wrong. I did it to prove me right. Later that evening, as she stepped outside to catch her breath, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned. It was Ashton, older now, softer, no entourage. No arrogance. Congratulations, he said. She nodded. Thank you. A pause stretched between them. The cold night air hummed with old tension, now faded. I think about that day often, he continued. The day you walked into the wedding. I thought I was on top of the world, but you reminded me I was just standing on sand. Malaya exhaled slowly. I'm not angry anymore, Ashton. I've grown past needing an apology. He looked down. Still, I'm sorry. For the years. I didn't see you. For thinking your silence meant you had nothing to say. You weren't ready to listen, she replied. I am now. She looked at him, not with anger, but with clarity. Then start listening to the world. Not just to me. With that, she walked away, and he didn't stop her this time. Later that year, a documentary aired on national television. The woman the world couldn't ignore, the Malaya Vaughn story. It began with images of her old cleaning uniform, then transitioned to courtrooms, lectures, protests, and finally, scholarships handed to young girls who had once believed their lives ended at struggle. The final line of the documentary? She was never just a maid. She was a warrior waiting for her armor. And when she found it, she became a goddess the world couldn't forget. Epilogue 5 years later, a little girl sat in the front row of a graduation ceremony, legs swinging, eyes wide. Her mother had just received her law degree through the Vaughn Foundation. Mommy, she asked afterward, who was that lady who gave you your scholarship? The mother pointed toward a woman on stage, speaking to a crowd. Still elegant? Still powerful, still humble. That's Malaya Vaughn, she said. The woman who changed everything. The girl smiled, her eyes shining. I want to be like her. And that, perhaps, was Malaya's greatest legacy. Not the fame, not the headlines, but the millions of girls who finally believed. They were worth watching too. The end.